Welcome to Golden Blue, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget about the checklist. Hat check, sunglasses check, Pepsi check, notes check, sources check, and thick skin is a check. And don't forget to sing gear to represent your team and yourself in my background. Send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina, 29657, and get yourself a shout out. On to the next video. In case you're wondering, these are the teams that we don't have represented for the mini helmets. As you can see, we actually have quite a few big brands that's not represented here at Golden Blue. So get your team represented here on Golden Blue. Hey, you already know what time it is, so might as well sit down, brace yourself, and buckle up because you are entering the speculation zone. Whoa. Now I'm starting to hear from Oklahoma fans that Oklahoma could possibly be involved as far as getting teams to jump out of Pac-12, and it has something to do with Lincoln Riley. I know this is far-fetched, but it's definitely interesting, so you know I'm going to do a video on it. By the way, this will be a Get It Gang video idea. If you don't know what the Get It Gang is, it's basically a name that I came up with for the group of people that leave video ideas in the comment section of my videos. So if you think that you have a good video idea, leave your idea in the comment section of this video or any other video, and I just might use it on my next video. Let's set the foundation. The first Get It Gang video idea is from David Hackett. It says USC and UCLA had to have known something was going to happen with the new TV deal and talked to the Big Ten to leave. This will result in more schools leaving due to recruiting and exposure issues. 100% agree, and it ties into everything that I've been saying. Yesterday, the Monty Show said this. The headline was, The Monty Show 920, ESPN is out on Pac-12 TV deal. ESPN sources were saying we are nowhere close to a deal. Another headline, YouTube, The Monty Show. The Pac-12 and ESPN are not in a good place. Is the Pac-12 going 100% streaming? And the Swan Show said this. Breaking news. ESPN only paying $9 million per Pac-12 team, but now they're going to offer multiple Pac-12 schools the same money they'll pay each to make a Big 12 move. If more than 4, I'm not a fan. And then, of course, our favorite college football conspiracy theorist MacGyver had this to say. BYU has met with presidents from Colorado and Arizona in recent days. We'll be meeting with Arizona president soon. Tide may be turning. Presidents are getting antsy despite public talking points. 45 seconds to Pac midnight. Hashtag Pac-12 doomsday clock. And then the Swan Show said this today. Once again, money is a huge issue within the Pac-12. But the bigger issue is that no one will see you if you're not on ESPN and or Fox. This was a big issue with the Pac-12 network and looks to be getting even worse. On to more Get It Gang video ideas. And I used this on a previous video. This was from Bonehead. He started with a quote. Nobody out there is wanting to do a deal. President Robert Robbins, Arizona Wildcats. Quote from Dennis Dodd article, how pathetic is that? So that's the foundation. The Pac-12 being in a bad situation. USC and UCLA possibly knowing that the Pac-12 was going to be in this particular situation and bouncing to the Big Ten. Now, this next Get It Gang video is actually from an Oklahoma fan. This is from Kyle H. This was actually an email to me. He says, I am a Sooner fan. So this goes to part of a theory that some around Norman and Oklahoma City have on Pac-12 issues. There is talk that there is an unspoken coup or co-op against the Pac-12 because of Lincoln Riley and the way he left Oklahoma, which is the reason with OU in Texas is leaving for the SEC in 2024. So he's saying Riley left because he knew they were going to the SEC. This gives the Big 12 and the Big 10 the chance to rob the entire Pac-12 and basically eliminating it, forcing Riley to actually have to play real teams. I have friends that are fans of other Big 12 teams that have heard the same thing around their teams. So he's saying that Oklahoma is definitely for the demise of the Pac-12, but their reasons are a little bit different. They're still mad about how Lincoln Riley left for USC, and I agree with him. It was kind of dirty as far as the things he said on the way out. Now, you got to realize coaches are going to make decisions that's best for themselves. They're not going to care about the teams when it comes to a certain extent. But it was the things that he said when he left. Basically dogging Oklahoma, saying there's nothing in town except for football, doesn't like the spotlight, this and that. Just basically calling Norman a hick town. So I can understand those issues. So Oklahoma fans, they're actually rooting for the Pac-12's demise. Even though USC has already bounced for the Big Ten, they're wanting more of those premier Pac-12 teams to jump to the Big Ten. And that way the schedule of USC is as hard as possible. And if you look at the Big Ten from top to bottom, they might have a point. I know travel is going to be a big issue for USC and UCLA when it comes to the Big Ten, but when it comes to actual strength of schedule, I mean, they might play the combination of Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State maybe once a year. They're not going to play all three of those games or all three of those teams every year. So if you add in, say, a Washington and an Oregon, that's going to beef up the schedule of USC. They would be guaranteed to play both of those teams every year. And then maybe add an Ohio State or a Michigan or a Penn State once a year, maybe twice a year. Then you have your Wisconsin, your Iowa, maybe Nebraska gets better, who knows. Minnesota's pretty good. Michigan State could bounce back. But the lower part of the conference, Northwestern, Illinois, even though Illinois was good last year, Rutgers, Maryland was decent last year, Indiana, and Purdue has been okay at times. For the most part, it looks like USC's schedule could stay fairly easy, maybe a few tough games in there. But if the Big Ten adds Oregon and Washington, that beefs up their schedule, and USC actually doesn't want to play Oregon and Washington every year. But if the Big Ten brings in those two teams, it would benefit USC and UCLA's travels. So I'm sure that USC would be forced to play those two teams every year. I think if USC and UCLA had their choice, they would actually want the Big Ten to add Cal and Stanford from the Pac-12, not Oregon and Washington from the Pac-12. Well, I do think that the Big Ten adds Washington no matter what. Washington is a must-get both from the athletic and the academic standpoint. You can't forget about the academics when it comes to the Big Ten. So I think Washington is a perfect combination. And then I personally think that they'll add a California team to help with the travels of USC and UCLA and to help with the academics as well. Probably Stanford and Washington is my most likely candidates as far as the next go-around for the Big Ten. But in order for that to happen, I do think that the Big Ten needs the Big 12 to make their move first. And that's why Oklahoma fans are in favor of the Big 12 to get the Pac-12 teams. That way, the Big Ten is able to get Washington and Oregon or Washington and Stanford because they want the schedule of USC to be as difficult as possible, because they think that Lincoln Riley chose the easiest path of resistance whenever he left Oklahoma to go to USC, which he probably did, but the main thing is he trash-talked Norman and Oklahoma on his way out, and that's why they really have a problem with Lincoln Riley. And it looks like ESPN might be obliging them, because ESPN, we've heard that they had a decent deal with Pac-12, but then they backed out of that because of Disney issues as far as laying off workers. And they re-offered and lowballed the Pac-12, $9 million per team per year. And that's not counting if the Pac-12 expands. And then more recently, we're hearing that the Pac-12 and ESPN are actually not close to a deal, and that ESPN might actually be thinking about backing out of the deal altogether, which would make it 100% streaming. It's already bad enough, only one game a week on linear cable, and that's going to hurt the Pac-12 teams when it comes to recruiting and local economics between the months of August and November. Now on top of that, we're hearing that ESPN might actually be encouraging teams to jump from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 and possibly bribing them. Now that one I don't buy, but who knows? Crazy things are going on right now, so who knows? So Oklahoma fans are hoping that all this happens in hopes that Lincoln Riley gets the toughest schedule possible when USC does eventually go to the Big Ten. Now whether Oklahoma is actually contributing to the situation, I don't know. I really don't know how they would do that. But then again, it really wouldn't surprise me. So y'all let me know in the comment section. Number one, do you think ESPN is actually encouraging Pac-12 teams to jump from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 and possibly even bribing them? Number two, do you think Oklahoma is somehow, some way contributing to teams jumping from the Pac-12 to the Big 12? That way the Big Ten can make their move, and that way the future schedule of Lincoln Riley can be as tough as possible. I find it hard to believe, but I want to get your opinion on that particular subject. And finally, with this situation with ESPN either lowballing the Pac-12 or pulling out of the deal altogether, do you think the Pac-12 is going to be able to get these teams to sign a grant of rights, especially if those grant of rights go past 3 years? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.